the quantum entanglement that happens immediately after you're injected, and you get hooked up to what they're trying to develop. It's called the hive mind, and they want all of us there as a node and as an electronic avatar.
If you're unfamiliar, this is Sherry Tenpenny on the right, complete conspiracy theorist and obsessed with the idea that they're trying to like control your body with the vaccine or some other nonsense. And this is Stu Peters on the left. He's who we're going to be talking about today. This dude, God, you know what? Everybody we're talking about tonight needs help. They need help desperately, okay? But Stu Peters particularly I want to talk about because he is a really influential broadcaster. I don't know how else to describe what he does. I don't think he's on YouTube, but he has like a podcast, and he talks on the radio, I believe. And he's giant. He's got like a Telegram channel and the whole 9 yards. He's a flat earther. He believes that the COVID vaccine was a secret, what Sherry Tenpenny just said, a secret plan to take control of people's minds and blah, 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 whatever. He believes all of this. It's insane, but honestly, deeply entertaining to listen to sometimes. So we're going to listen to some of this because oh, it makes me laugh. So he reacted to Donald Trump's indictment, I think his fourth indictment, mid-August 2023. Just listen to what he says here.
This demands action, and it demands it right now. So if you live in Georgia, here's what you demand. A special session of the Georgia legislature immediately. Defund the Fulton County DA's office and remove Fani Willis from power immediately.
Okay.
And if a judge tries to stop you, ignore them.
Okay, now, the last notable time that I remember specifically that a president ignored the Supreme Court specifically was the Trail of Tears. Andrew Jackson in the 1840s, ignored the Supreme Court, who ruled that committing the genocide that was the Trail of Tears was illegal. And Andrew Jackson said, okay, enforce it then. Of course, the executive branch has the military, and the judicial branch only relies on tradition, really, more than anything, right? So if you're not following tradition, if you're not agreeing to the rules of society, not the laws, not the regulations, but the expectations of society, you don't have a society, or you don't have those rules or expectations. Right, the judicial branch of the government only has authority or power because it's backed by the threat of force, which is executed by the executive branch. The executive branch has a military. They have control of basically everything, and they back up everything that the judicial branch and the legislative branch and everybody else says. I feel like the power balance there is a little skewed, but okay, whatever, So this guy's basically endorsing the idea that we should just ignore judges and split the country in half and not cooperate anymore. Not be a single country. That's what he's saying, really.
In every other red state, here's what you demand. Cease all cooperation with the federal government on anything.
Okay, this guy has to know that red states make way less money than blue states, right? He has to know that blue states subsidize the red states, doesn't he? Actually, you know what? I'll tell you an interesting little story about this. Every major city around the world you can look and find is usually they're near a water source, right? And the reason is because those cities have been there for a long, long time, and it's easiest to build a city near a water source, or it was 500, 1,000 years ago, or even 10,000 years ago. It was easiest to build a city near a water source, right? So that's what people usually did. And as a result, areas near water, cities, have historically been economic powerhouses. The entire economy is generated through these economic powerhouses, these cities. Quick interjection. I won't take long. I just wanted to tell you guys, YouTube's algorithm operates off of a few factors. Watch time, whether or not you subscribe, and whether or not you like something. So if you really want to help my channel, I would appreciate it if you guys watch the video to the end. If you don't watch it to the end, just watch a little bit longer than you would have otherwise. I would appreciate that very much. All right, let's get back to the video. before 1860, the slave population in Mississippi was 52%. 52% of the people that lived in Mississippi were slaves. Okay, so Jackson, Mississippi runs up along the Mississippi River, and it's a pretty big city, but it's impoverished. This area is destitute. Not just Jackson, but Mississippi overall. It's destitute there. Why? Why is New York City and, I don't know, LA and whatever other, Portland, other areas that are around water sources, even Salt Lake City, why are they flourishing and contributing to the economic powerhouse that is the United States, but not Mississippi? Why? And there's a very simple, straightforward answer to that question. Interestingly enough, the answer is because in the 1840s, Mississippi's main, almost exclusive export was cotton, and they didn't need to hire workers to pick that cotton. All they needed to do was buy slaves. So there was a wealth disparity that was absolutely off the charts. You had people that were being paid basically, they were being paid nothing. They were slaves. And then you had people, the plantation owners, that gained all of that money from the slaves' labor. And then you had this weird underclass that wasn't slave and it wasn't plantation owner, but they were competing with slaves who had $0 in wages to get these jobs. Like, why would anybody hire them when we have slaves anyways? And it led to complete poverty among the underclass that existed there that was not part of the slave class. First of all, wealth disparity like that, having just a few very, very, very rich people and a ton of very, very poor people, that's really bad for an economy. You know what else is really bad for an economy? Having a single export or an exclusive or a predominant export. Mostly the same thing. Mostly cotton, or in Russia's case, mostly fossil fuels, right? Just pointing that one out for you. So when slavery was banned, the plantation owners had no reason to stay there. In fact, they wanted to GTFO as quickly as they could because they were pretty convinced that the dude that they just whipped to was going to walk into the house and murder them in their sleep. Reasonably so. You know, I'd be afraid of that too if I were in that situation. Absolutely. So the plantation owners got out, sold their property as quickly as they possibly could, and left. And that left Mississippi, this powerhouse that existed, Jackson, Mississippi, made a ton of money for the United States with all the cotton coming out of there. This made this economic powerhouse nearly destitute. The slaves were free, but it takes generations to build up some degree of wealth. And the underclass, who was previously competing with the slaves, are now competing on the same level playing field, but there's nothing there anymore. They're not growing cotton. Eventually the cotton gin came along and kind of made their job obsolete anyways, and made Mississippi obsolete as a result. So interestingly enough, some of the southern states, some of the reddest states, where most of the plantation owners lived and where their families currently live, you know, where the KKK controlled entire towns for decades and decades up until fairly recently, those places are destitute. They're broke. They're broke as it gets. So feel free to split off from the United States if that's what you want to do, Stu. Sure. Mississippi can go. They're kind of a drain on our system anyways. Oh, and one more thing before I continue. That little wink and nod toward Russia having an economy that produces like almost exclusively a single export, that's going to be relevant soon. Sure, they have an arms industry. Sure, they have research professors, and they make vaccines. They made the Sputnik vaccine for COVID. They make medicines and stuff like that. But by and large, their main export is fossil fuels. That's where almost all of Russia's money comes from, fossil fuels. When fossil fuels are phased out, Russia's going to be in a bad place, and they know it. So they're trying to take as much as they can right now and use what they have right now while they have it, in my opinion. Anyway, that's another story for another day.
immediately. No cooperation on any law enforcement. No providing any requested federal data. Treat the Biden regime as, at best, an occupying power in a conquered land. Be defiant.
Well, I mean, like I said last time I talked about this clip, that we can do that. That's possible. You know, if that's what he wants, the Biden administration can be an occupying force. Remove all of the traitors in the legislature, the state legislature in Mississippi or wherever, Georgia, whatever. Remove them all because they're traitors to the U.S. government, and replace them with brand new people, hold new elections with people who are not going to commit treason. I'm down. Let's do it. Perfect way to suss out the the people that are looking for an opportunity to get one over on the U.S. government. Perfect way to suss out the Confederates in the system, right? Anyway, that was Stu Peters' reaction to Donald Trump being indicted. You can kind of see where the dude's head's at, right? Like, the indictments are in the past, but this at least shows where his head's at. That's what I was aiming for. Check out this clip from late January 2022 of Sherry Tenpenny fear-mongering to Stu Peters and lying, just flat out, blatantly, bold-faced lying about the vaccine. By the way, she used to be a doctor. She has the degree that a doctor gets, the equivalent degree of a doctor. She had her medical license revoked recently. Disgusting that this person's a doctor. Just listen. You'll see what I mean. Late January 2022.
Stated goal is to depopulate the planet, and the ones that are left either make them chronically sick or turn them into transhumanist cyborgs.
Oh boy, that's a lot of words. Whose stated goal? I feel like the clip was kind of cut off before we got to here, but I'd bet anything that she's talking about the World Economic Forum. That's like a big conspiracy. The WEF is just a think tank on a worldwide level that's made up of very rich people who can take their money, like Bill Gates, for example, and put it in the most valuable places. You know, people need a vaccine in Rwanda because there's a polio outbreak. Then these philanthropists at the WEF can get together and pool their money and pay for this vaccine in Rwanda, for example. Or, there's a food shortage in the Congo and it would cost $4 billion to resolve. They pool their money together and they solve the problem. That's what the WEF does. Now, she lives in a fantasy land where she thinks that, I'm assuming the WEF is out to get you and they're using the vaccine to do so. But okay, let's keep listening.
Into transhumanist cyborgs that can be controlled by and manipulated externally.
So she thinks that people are going to be cyborgs that are manipulated externally. Well, I'm 34, I think. I've had 4 vaccines, and I got my first vaccine the moment it was available, I think 2021. So, I've had them for a couple years now. And weirdly, let's see. Yeah, look here. I got something magnetic. A pair of pliers turns into a knife or whatever, right? This is magnetic, isn't it? Huh. Look at that. I'm not magnetic like she claimed. Isn't that weird? You telling me this woman lied to me? It couldn't be that, right? Keep listening. She's got just the most bizarre conspiracy theory. And by the way, he had her on. Stu Peters got this woman on to talk about this because he believes this stuff too. Again, Stu Peters is a flat earther, okay? Open about it.
By manipulated externally by 5G, by magnets, by all sorts of things. Now, I got dragged through the mud by the mainstream media when I said that in May of last year in front of the House Committee in Columbus. Well, guess what?
Yeah, because it was psychotic, okay? There are not magnetic people who got the vaccine. I got 4 of them, okay? No magnetism here. I'm not magnetic. Jesus Christ on a cracker, bro. She got made fun of for talking about it. Did you catch what she said there? Listen again.
Externally by 5G, by magnets, by all sorts of things. Now, I got dragged through the mud by the mainstream media when I said that in May of last year in front of the House Committee in Columbus.
Because it was a stupid thing to say. What, are you really surprised that you got dragged through the mud, quote unquote? We didn't have to drag you through the mud. We just had to play the clip, okay? I didn't need to say anything. In fact, I'm not going to. I'm not going to say a word. Just watch what she said to the House committee.
Because right now we're all kind of hypothesizing. I mean, what is it that's actually being transmitted that's causing all of these things? Is it a combination of the protein, which now we're finding has a metal attached to it? I'm sure you've seen the pictures all over the internet of people who've had these shots and now they're magnetized. They can put
I mean, do I really need to say anything about this? It's absurd at its face. They can put a key on their forehead, she says.
Of people who've had these shots and now they're magnetized. They can put a key on their forehead, it sticks. They can put spoons and forks all over them and they can stick. Because now we think that there's a metal piece to that.
No. Who is we, by the way? She's using weasel words here. Now we think. Who is the we in this equation? Just absurd, man. Anyway, so she says she's dragged through the mud for that hearing that we just watched.
By 5G, by magnets, by all sorts of things. Now, I got dragged through the mud by the mainstream media when I said that in May of last year in front of the House committee in Columbus. Well, guess what? It's all true.
No. Literally none of it was true. It was all made up all along. This was from 2022, I think. May 2022 or something. I don't remember. It was at the start of this video. This video is from 2022 that we're talking about, and she says it's all true. No, it's not. I'm not magnetic. I mean, I'm looking for any magnetic thing around me here. You guys don't think the government is in a plot to make my house completely non-magnetized, do you? Have only non-ferric, is that what it's called? Non-ferric metals around me? Is that what's happening? You think the government's trying to remove iron from our lives right now because we're all magnetic? That could be it. That could be it. Or, alternatively, you live in a fantasy land. That could be it too, I suppose.
Committee in Columbus. Well, guess what? It's all true. It's all true. They talk, the whole issue of quantum entanglement and how what these shots do in terms of the frequencies and the electronic frequencies that come inside of your body and hook.
That's what she said.
Up to the Internet of Things, the quantum entanglement that happens immediately after you're injected, and you get hooked up to what they're trying to develop. It's called the hive mind, and they want all of us there as a node and as an electronic avatar that is an exact replica of us, except it's an electronic replica.
Wait, this sounds awesome, doesn't it? Doesn't this sound incredible? Is she talking about like... Science fiction writers have written about this for like ever, where you have like an avatar that you can control or whatever. That would be amazing. I mean, she's talking about the Matrix, right? She's making references to the Matrix and pretending that that's happening in real life. Like, she lives in a fantasy land in all seriousness. This is not happening to any degree, like ever. And anytime, you know how you can tell? When somebody says the term quantum entanglement, it's nearly a guarantee they don't have any clue what they're talking about. I mean, Einstein spoke on quantum entanglement, and even he didn't fully understand it, okay? Sherry Tenpenny does not understand quantum entanglement. Be skeptical anytime you hear that from somebody.
Electronic replica, it's not our God-given body that we were born with. And all of that will be running through the metaverse that they're talking about.
The metaverse.
All of these things are real, Stu. All of them.
Yeah.
And it's happening right now. So it's not some science fiction thing happening out in the future. It's happening right now.
No, it isn't. It was never happening. Get help, Sherry. And Stu. You hear Stu? Yeah. Did you hear what he said? Yeah. He's like agreeing with her.
In real time.
Yeah.
Just insane, dude. Insane. For what it's worth, Stu Peters has actually talked to some pretty crazy people. That's not the only nutter butter that he's spoken with. This is from late August 2023. He spoke with Wendy Rogers. That's the name of this person, Wendy Rogers. She is a representative in Arizona, a state-level representative, I believe. But she's also a Nazi, or at the very least, she affiliates heavily with Nazis. She hangs out with Nick Fuentes, who is a Nazi, an open... known Nazi who loves Hitler, who has argued for the idea that Hitler did the right thing and all this other stuff. So, what else do you call her? You defend a Nazi, you go to Nazis' conferences, you hang out with Nazis. Seems to me that you're a Nazi, right? I mean, anyway. So she goes on Stu Peters' show and has this to say. Check this out.
Speaking of enemy combatants, that's what these people are. They have taken over a country. They have effected a Marxist coup d'etat.
I mean, I think they're talking about people to the left of hunting the homeless for sport. If you're not in favor, if you're not so far to the right that you're in favor of hunting the homeless for sport, then this probably applies to you.
Speaking of enemy combatants, that's what these people are. They have taken over a country. They have effected a Marxist coup d'etat. These are the real insurrectionists who have committed sedition, seditious conspiracy to overthrow the government, a government that, by the way, is designed to be representative of the people and is now cracking down on and crushing the people.
Okay. So the people have committed sedition, you say. Is that just through democracy? Like they voted, because they didn't like Donald Trump, they voted him out of office, and that's sedition in his mind, I guess?
Judiciary has failed us. The legal process has failed us. The voting process has failed us. The legal process has failed us. And so I think that right now what Americans need to be exploring is our extra legal options.
Which is civil war. That's what he's really calling for. I mean, it's a little bit veiled here, but that's what he wants, is civil war. Again, people who have experienced war, like real war, people who stormed the beaches of Normandy in, 1944? In World War II? People who stormed those beaches, they don't want war. They know what war brings. When you're standing next to somebody, just standing there, smoking a cigarette, talking to them, and you see a bullet go between their eyes and the light go out of their eyes like that, you realize how deeply ugly war really is. What's the saying? War isn't hell. War is war, and hell is hell. And of the two, war is a lot worse. Because people choose to go to war, actively choose to go to war. And your ass isn't the one making the decision. So I guess they do have some similarities, biblically, whatever. Just the fact that he's suggesting such a thing is deeply horrific and tells me he's never been a part of a war in his entire life. He's never really seen war before. He doesn't know what it's like. Because if he did, he would not be advocating for civil war, certainly. Okay, well, as an elected representative, she vowed to uphold the Constitution of the United States, right? And she should be denouncing that. Let's see what she says.
What Americans need to be exploring is our extra legal options. Wendy Rogers, we love you so much. Thank you for coming back and hope to see you again soon.
God bless America.
God bless America. Okay, well, thank you for thank you for distancing yourself from Stu Peters. That was fantastic. Thank you for reaffirming that you do stand for the Constitution and that you don't want a civil war. That's fantastic. She did all the right things there. Absolute psychosis, dude. Well, for what it's worth, she's crazy, dude. I told you, she went to a Nazi conference, full-blown Nazi conference. This is the talk she gave at this Nazi conference. I just wanted you to see it, see what happened there. Late February 2022.
Our country is forcibly vaccinating people.
No. At no point did that ever happen in the history of ever in the United States. Our country did not forcibly vaccinate anybody. There's a testing mandate for all of 2 weeks. If you had a company over 100 employees, you had a testing mandate. You had to test your employees once a week. But they could be exempted from that test, that once a week test, by getting a vaccine. That's as close as we came to a vaccine mandate in the United States. And for the record, that was shot down by the Supreme Court anyways, so it lasted almost no time at all. Basically didn't even take effect. There was never a vaccine mandate in the United States, ever. At least not for the COVID one. I don't know about Spanish flu, if they even had one. I have no idea. But there's never a vaccine mandate for the COVID vaccine in the U.S. Didn't happen. If you think so, you live in a fantasy, but we already knew that about somebody that would appear at a Nazi conference, right? An elected representative who would show up to a Nazi conference and speak there.
Our country is forcibly vaccinating people with a bioweapon that gives people heart attacks, blood clots, and immune deficiency.
No, none of that is true. It's all completely made up. The vaccine is not and was not at that time dangerous for people to take. Again, fantasy land.
Criminal. At this historic point,
Oh my God, you can hear the Nazis in the background yelling criminal.
it will take all of us to speak out and defend each other for standing up for what is right. When we do take back our God-given rights, we will bring these criminals to justice.
And of course, criminal is anybody that doesn't agree with her, right?
I've said we need
And they're the Nazis cheering.
to build more gallows.
Build more gallows, she says.
If we try some of these high-level criminals, convict them, and use a newly built set of gallows.
A newly built set of gallows. If you don't know what a gallows is, it's basically a hangman thing, like a structure where you build this structure and you got a rope hanging down where you hang somebody who you consider to be evil or whatever. They did that to Saddam Hussein. There's video of it. It's pretty horrific. You don't want to look for it. It's an ugly thing. Deeply, deeply ugly. But you know what they do in despotic regimes? You know what they do in dictatorships? The dictators typically, like Saddam Hussein was a dictator. He's a terrible guy, truthfully. Japanese emperor back in the 1940s and lots of other people, Donald Trump and other people, Kim Jong-un and others, Vladimir Putin, they like to get the people around them, they like to get their hands dirty too. So they'll do whatever it takes to get your hands dirty so that you can't just leave and report on them and say, yeah, this guy is absolutely terrible, because you'd be implicating yourself in it. They want you to share in the crimes. So typically, they'll get some of the people, some of their inner circle, to commit some of those crimes for them, to murder somebody for them, because they want them to be dirty too. And a lot of the time, people like Saddam Hussein would hold public hangings. They would build those gallows, and if somebody disagreed with him, did something he didn't like or whatever, or just, looked at him wrong, whatever, string him up on the gallows. And everybody in the area was required to come out and witness what happens next. That happens in North Korea to this day. Everybody comes out of their home and witnesses this person losing his life. That's very intentional. It sends a message to enemies of the regime. She's saying we need more gallows, stronger gallows, bigger gallows, and we need to hold public executions. What she's describing is things that dictatorship regimes do regularly. And she's describing this at a Nazi conference. She has no place to be in government at all.
These high-level criminals, convict them, and use a newly built set of gallows. It'll make an example of these traitors who betray our country.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like she was joking there. There's no smile. It's completely deadpan. She was dead serious, right? A newly built set of gallows.
It'll make an example of these traitors who betray our country.
It'll make an example of something, traitors, something, or I couldn't make out what she was saying. So anyway, as far as I'm concerned, she's a Nazi. You guys think that's a fair leap to make? Shows up at Nazi conferences, gives talks like that, supports people that are open, self-avowed Nazis. Nick Fuentes has gone on Alex Jones to debate whether or not Hitler was a good guy. I'm not joking, okay? I'm dead serious. Is it safe to call her a Nazi? I mean, I don't want to run around calling people Nazis if they're not, right? Yeah, that's a pretty big charge. I feel like it's fair in this case. Elected representative, okay? Arizona. We need to get her out of there for real. Stu Peters has all kinds of nutcases on, though. It hasn't just been Wendy Rogers, Nazi as far as I'm concerned. It hasn't just been Sherry Tenpenny, conspiracy theorist extraordinaire. I think he's had Stella Emanuel on, which is a whole new can of worms we're not getting into right now. He's also had Kari Lake on. If you're watching this 5 years in the future, Kari Lake ran for governor against Katie Hobbs in Arizona in 2022 and lost and refused to accept that loss. Even after Katie Hobbs was sworn in, even after the votes were audited and audited and audited again, Lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit were lost by Kari Lake, and we have a new governor that's making executive orders and all this other stuff. This woman would not give up on it. I suspect she's aiming for a spot in Donald Trump's cabinet, but okay. So this is early February 2023. This is Kari Lake's appearance on Stu Peters' show. I just want to give you an idea of who Stu Peters is.
It's great to be back on. Yeah, I mean, fake is a good way of describing it. We've got fake elections, we get fake results, and then we get a fake government. And right now we have squatters sitting in the State House here. It's outrageous what happened on Election Day.
This is her whole bit. This is what she does. She does tours around the country, makes all kinds of claims about how people cheated her out of an election, cheated Trump out of an election, blah, 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 whatever. It gets so tiring listening to these people make these ridiculous claims constantly.
It's outrageous what happened on Election Day. They thought that I would walk away and lick my wounds because this is such a huge...
Because that's what an adult does when they lose an election? Yeah, that's what I expected you to do. Walk away, accept defeat, and move on with your life. Hell, try again. Try again if you want. You're welcome to. That's how democracy works, baby. No, she didn't want to do that. She wanted to claim that it was stolen from her. Not just once, not just twice, but do a whole campaign about it. And by the way, you can see Stu Peters' link at the bottom there. Well, it was just at, yeah, okay, it's got t.me/s/Stu Peters. That's his Telegram link. I have a Telegram strictly and only for the purpose of following the Nutter Buttery as far as I can. Okay, this is my Telegram right here. I follow Stu Peters. I'm in some private groups on here, too, that I had to be accepted into. I mean, some of these are, like, private groups here that you don't get access to unless they grant you access. Jaron Jackson is absolutely psychotic, ran for public office and lost. Oh, let's see. Who else we got here? Professor Toto. This is Shane Vaughn. He is, again, absolutely psychotic. We've got Ramana Didulo. Wait, where's Ramana Didulo on this list? Here it is. HRM, Her Royal Majesty. HRM, Queen Ramana Didulo. She's a QAnon cult leader, for lack of a better term. Claims to be a lizard person, but she's a good lizard person working for you. That's who this person is. Insane. Anyway, the whole point of this is to point out the Stu Peters show here. He's on Telegram, and some of the shit he says on here is just unglued from reality. I don't know how else to put it or what else to say about it. It's nuts, dude. Okay, so this is 24 seconds. Let's just take a look at this. The open disregard for the rule of law is intentional. The lawlessness must be put down. Use of the word put down is very intentional there. He wants to kill people who seemingly break the law. Vigilante justice type deal. That's what he's shooting for. Literally, in some cases. It's just a dude basically carrying stuff out, if you're listening. It's a dude that grabbed a bunch of stuff and he's walking out of a store. I mean, these people are all over camera. Police are going to swarm their house, and they're going to take all of that stuff back, bring it back to the store, put them in jail for the rest of their life. Quick tip to anybody thinking about doing this, don't. You will get caught, especially because there's a camera behind every blade of grass in the United States. There are probably more cameras in the U.S. than there are guns, and that's a truly impressive feat. Yeah, I have no idea what this is actually depicting or if this is even real or if it was fabricated or any of that stuff. But, you know, with this message here, he's advocating for extrajudicial killings. He's trying to get these people murdered. Theft does not equal murder. An eye for an eye doesn't even apply here. An eye for an eye would be you steal all that stuff back or you steal from these people or whatever. He wants a death penalty for presumably theft, if this is to be believed. Dude is insane. He is insane. And Kari Lake is on his show talking about all this crazy stuff here.
Thought that I would walk away and lick my wounds because this is such a huge behemoth to go up against. But they're wrong. I will never, ever back down from this fight. I am
Because I can fundraise off it for the rest of my life, of course.
so appalled at what these, I don't know if I can use the word bastards, did to the people of Arizona.
We have been the party.
Well, this is like a group of people who believes themselves to be like giga religious, so probably don't use the word bastards. That's just my thought.
And use the word bastards did to the people of Arizona.
We have been the party of people. We have been the group of
You're right.
conservative Christians who has avoided, violence or bloodshed at all costs. We have
Really? You think conservatives have avoided violence or bloodshed at all costs? Do you really think that, Stu? You know what? This is an objective thing that we can objectively look up and find an objective answer to. Let's see. Percent domestic terrorism by political party in the United States. Yeah, this is the Washington Post. It's reasonably trustworthy. I actually have a subscription to it already. All right, let's see here. So this is from 2015 to 2021. It basically says domestic terrorism incidents have soared to new highs in the U.S., driven chiefly by white supremacist, anti-Muslim, and anti-government extremists on the far right, according to a Washington Post analysis of data compiled by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. That's what we were just looking at a minute ago, but didn't actually click on. The surge reflects a growing threat from homegrown terrorism not seen in a quarter century, with right-wing extremist attacks and plots greatly eclipsing those from the far left and causing more deaths, the analysis shows. The number of all domestic terrorism incidents in the data peaked in 2020. That's probably because of the COVID, lockdowns, and because people were being careful, not because of government lockdowns, just because people were just not going out as much, and they were becoming stir crazy. That's my guess. Since 2015, right-wing extremists have been involved in 267 plots or attacks and 91 fatalities, the data shows. At the same time, attacks and plots ascribed to far-left views accounted for 66 incidents, leading to 19 deaths. So 267 plots on the right, 91 fatalities. 66 incidents on the left, 19 deaths. What's most concerning, this is a quote, is that the number of domestic terror plots and attacks are at the highest they have been in decades, said Seth Jones, director of the database project at CSIS, a nonpartisan Washington-based nonprofit that specializes in national security issues. It's so important for Americans to understand the gravity of the threat before it gets worse. So the bottom line here is, if we went through all this, I feel like this is way zoomed in and it shouldn't be. Yeah, it was. The bottom line is that far-right domestic terrorism is dramatically on the rise. There's almost no left-wing domestic terrorism taking place right now. Almost none, comparatively. The threat is in the house, if you will. The problem exists on this side of the aisle, on the right, Stu. And he must know that, right? I have to imagine he knows that, and so does Kari Lake.
Of
You're right.
conservative Christians who has avoided violence or bloodshed at all costs. We have really come to the table with everything that we can.
No. It's been domestic terrorism all the way down.
And it just seems to be falling on deaf ears. I just don't know how long a dog can be poked before it comes out of the corner and just starts biting. People.
And that's him actually calling for violence right there. So he pretends that there's no violence happening on his side, and then he actually calls for it.
Are concerned about the safety and the future of their children, what we're leaving behind for our kids, with racist, poisonous CRT in our schools and this transgender freak show craze that's happening in front of kids. I mean, freak shows in front of kids that they're in.
Oh, how horrific that parents chose to do this with their freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of choice. How messed up is that? That parents are allowed to make choices for their children. Wow, that's super messed up, right? As if they're bringing, drag shows into schools and forcing students to sit down and watch them. These people live in a fantasy land. What happened to people's free choice? They never cared about it. They were using it as a tool to their advantage. Simple as that.
Freak shows in front of kids that they're inviting to these things. Our military has been decimated, completely gutted.
Just complete fabrication. No, it hasn't. We have the strongest military in the world right now.
We've got a president whose election was stolen just like yours.
No. Donald Trump lost fair and square. He's just a sore loser. That's all.
And just like yours was. I mean, the list, You say that they would only
I
allow
agree.
you 5
I don't know
hours.
how much longer the people can take it.
So this is basically them calling for violence. That's what Stu Peters does. Calls for violence. He hosts full-blown Nazis, in my opinion, on his show. He gets conspiracy theorists on to talk about how the COVID vaccine is hooking you up to the Matrix, the Internet of Things, or some other nonsense. And he talks about how it's time to start this civil war because Donald Trump is being indicted, and that's just too much for him. It's just embarrassing, man. You got to move on with your life, for real. Because these domestic terror trends are kind of concerning. Let me know what you think in the comments.